Yuta Padakam Guru Vaishnavangscha Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshakamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya
Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Shila Guru Deva. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paripraja Kacharya Stotra Sri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paripraja Kacharya Stotra Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Jamuna Mai ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Sambeta Bhaktavinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Glory to Srila Prabhupada. So, in honor of Sri Nrsimha Chaturdasi, the Divine Appearance Day of Lord Nrsimhadev, I will read one important verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 5, Prahlad, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu, Chapter 5, Text 32. But before I read the verse, I will read the chapter summary, which will give us some background. Chapter 5, Prahlad Maharaj, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu. Prahlad Maharaj did not carry out the orders of his teachers, for he was always engaged in worshiping Lord Vishnu. As described in this chapter, Hiranyakashipu tried to kill Prahlad Maharaj, even by having a snake bite him and by putting him under the feet of elephants. Yet he was unsuccessful. Hiranyakashipu's spiritual master, Shukracharya, had two sons named Sanda and Amarka, to whom Prahlad was entrusted for education. Although the teachers tried to educate the boy Prahlad in politics, economics, and other material activities, he did not care for their instructions. Instead, he continued to be a pure devotee. Prahlad Maharaj never liked the idea of discriminating between one's friends and enemies. Because he was spiritually inclined, he was equal toward everyone. Once upon a time, Hiranyakashipu inquired from his son what the best thing was that he had learned from his teachers. Prahlad Maharaj replied that a man engrossed in material consciousness of duality, thinking this is mine and that belongs to my enemy, should give up his householder life and go to the forest and worship the Supreme Lord. When Hiranyakashipu heard from his son about devotional service, he had decided that the small boy had been polluted by some friend in school. Thus, he advised the teachers to take care of the boy so that he would not become a Krishna-conscious devotee. However, when the teachers inquired from Prahlad Maharaj why he was going against their teachings, Prahlad Maharaj taught the teachers that the mentality of ownership is false, and that he was therefore trying to become an unalloyed devotee of Lord Vishnu. The teachers, being very angry at this answer, chastised and threatened the boy with many fearful conditions. They taught him to the best of their ability and then brought him before his father. Hiranyakashipu affectionately took his son Prahlad on his lap and then inquired from him what was the best thing that he had learned from his teachers. As usual, Prahlad Maharaj began praising the 9 processes of devotional service, such as Shravanam and Kirtanam. Yes, this reply of Prahlad Maharaj is very important. In his answer to his father's question as to what was the best thing he had learned, Prahlad enumerated the 9 processes of devotional service, Navavidhi Bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. Thus, the king of the demons, Hiranyakashipu, being extremely angry, chastised the teachers, Sanda and Amarka, for having wrongly trained Prahlad Maharaj. So Hiranyakasipu accused the teachers, and the teachers responded, "You are accusing us wrongly." And Hiranyakasipu said, "You're allowing Vaishnavas to infiltrate the school." And they said, "No, we're not allowing Vaishnavas in disguise to infiltrate the school." And then they said, "Well," then Hiranyakasipu said, "Well, then how did he become Krishna conscious?" And the teacher said, "We don't know. You better ask him." The so-called teachers informed the king that Prahlad Maharaj was automatically a devotee and did not listen to their instructions. When they proved themselves innocent, Hiranyakasipu inquired from Prahlad where he had learned Vishnu Bhakti. Prahlad Maharaj replied that those who are attached to family life do not develop Krishna consciousness, either personally or collectively. So I'll read that. There are 2 verses that lead up to the main verse on which I'll be speaking, and I'll read both of those. Very significant. Instead, they suffer repeated birth and death in this material world and continue simply chewing the chewed. Prahlad explained that the duty of every man is to take shelter of a pure devotee and thus become eligible to understand Krishna consciousness. So that's leading up to today's verses. So in text 29, Hiranyakasipu asked Prahlad, "Where did you get this Krishna consciousness?" And at text 30, Prahlad replies, "Shri Prahlad Uvacha Matirna Krishna Parato Svatova Mito Bipadyeta Graha Pradhanam Adanta Gobir Vishatam Tamishram Punaschar Vitachar Padanam." Prahlad Maharaj replied, "Because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too addicted to material life make progress toward hellish conditions and repeatedly chew that which has already been chewed. That's Charvita Charvanana. Srila Prabhupada explains that phrase, Charvita Charvananam, chewing what has already been chewed. Just like if, you chew some sugar cane and you get all the juice out of it, and then you try to chew it some more, and there's nothing in it. There's nothing left. And yeah, I mean, Srila Prabhupada gave the example of sex. That, anyway, I don't need to discuss in detail, but that, yeah, they enjoy it in one way, and whatever little pleasure they could get, they've already gotten it, then they try to enjoy it in another way. And they're just like chewing the chewed. So then their inclination towards Krishna are never aroused either by the instructions of others, by their own efforts, or by a combination of both. So yeah, that's, so it seems that all logical possibilities have been excluded, that they can't become Krishna conscious by their own efforts. They can't become Krishna conscious by the efforts of others. And they can't become Krishna conscious by the combined effort of themselves and others. So it seems that all the logical possibilities have been excluded. So then how does one become Krishna conscious? Then in the next verse, Prahlad Maharaj explains more about people who cannot become Krishna conscious. Nate vidu svarthagatim hi vishnum durashayaye bahirarthamanina andayatandair upaniyamanas te pishatantriam urudam nibadha. Persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life and who have therefore accepted as their leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects, cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. So Svarthagatim means the ultimate goal of life or their real interests. So Prahlad begins, Nate vidu, they do not know, Svarthagatim, the ultimate goal of life or their real self-interest is Vishnu, to serve Vishnu and go back home, back to Godhead. As blind men, guided by another blind man, misses the right path and falls into a ditch, materially attached men, led by another materially attached man, are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. So yeah, anda yatandi upaniyamana, the blind leading the blind. And that's spiritually what's happening everywhere. The blind, the spiritually blind, are leading the spiritually blind. And they're all missing the right path. to go back home, back to Godhead. They're falling into the ditch of material existence. Now we come to today's verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So, Prahlad Maharaj has already said that one cannot become Krishna conscious by one's own efforts, by the efforts of others, or by the combination of both. So then what's left? How does one become Krishna conscious? So that is answered in this verse. Naishammatisthavadaru kramangrim sprishatyanartha pagamo yadartha mahiyasham padarajo vishekam niskinchananam navranitayavat. Naishammatisthavadaru kramangrim sprishatyanartha pagamo yadartha Mahiyasham padarajo bhishekam niskinchananam navranitayavat. Not a sham of these. Mati, the consciousness. Tavat, that long. Urukrama Angrim, the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is famous for performing uncommon activities. Sprishati does touch. Anartha, of unwanted things. Apagama, the disappearance. Yat, of which. Artha, the purpose. Mahiyasham, of the great souls, the Mahatmas or devotees. Pada Raja, the dust of the lotus feet. Abhishekam, consecration. Niskinchananam, of devotees who have nothing to do with this material world. Not. Vranita, may accept yavat, as long as. Translation. Unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, completely freed from material contamination, persons very much inclined toward materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for his uncommon activities. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord in this way can one be freed from material contamination. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Becoming Krishna conscious brings about anartha apagama, the disappearance of all anarthas, the miserable conditions we have unnecessarily accepted. The material body is the basic principle of these unwanted, miserable conditions. The entire Vedic civilization is meant to relieve one from these unwanted miseries. But persons bound by the laws of nature do not know the destination of life. Yes, not te vidu swarthagati Vishnu. They do not know the goal of life. That is Vishnu. As described in the previous verse, Ishatantriyam urudamni badha. They are conditioned by the three strong modes of material nature. The education that keeps the conditioned soul bound life after life is called materialistic education. I mean, that's the type of education that Hiranyakasipu was trying to arrange for Prahlad, but he didn't have anything to do with it. The education that keeps the conditioned soul bound life after life is called materialistic education. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained that materialistic education expands the influence of Maya. Such an education induces the conditioned soul to be increasingly attracted to materialistic life and to stray further and further away from liberation from unwanted miseries. So everyone wants to be happy, but as Srila Prabhupada says, and as we observe, people do not know how to become happy. A while ago, someone gave me a book called Stumbling Upon Happiness, written by a professor of sociology or psychology at Harvard University. And the premise of the book and the explanation of the title, Stumbling on Happiness, is that people are very poor at predicting what will make them happy. There's a whole generation of people who were taught that if you get a good education and get a good job or start a business and make lots of money and marry a beautiful wife and have lovely children and go on fabulous vacations, you'll be happy. So there's a whole generation of people who did exactly what they were told would make them happy. But guess what? It didn't make them happy. And that led to a whole new field of psychology, what makes people happy. And so the book, Stumbling Upon Happiness, is based on the premise that people don't really know what will make them happy. They just have to stumble on it. Unfortunately, we stumbled on Krishna consciousness, which can really make you happy. So, such an education induces the conditioned soul to be increasingly attracted to materialistic life and to stray further and further away from liberation from unwanted miseries, anartha. One may ask why highly educated persons do not take to Krishna consciousness. Well, that's a good question. The reason is explained in this verse. Unless one takes shelter of a bona fide, fully Krishna conscious spiritual master, there is no chance of understanding Krishna. The educators, scholars, and big political leaders, worshipped by millions of people, cannot understand the goal of life and take to Krishna consciousness. Why? Because they have not accepted a bona fide spiritual master and the Vedas. Therefore, in the Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.3, it is said, Nayam Atma Pravachanena Labhyo Namedayana Bahuna Shutena. One cannot become self-realized simply by having an academic education, by presenting lectures in an erudite way, pravachanena labhya, or by being an intelligent scientist who discovers many wonderful things. One cannot understand Krishna unless one is graced by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And how do we become graced by the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Only one who has surrendered to a pure devotee of Krishna and taken the dust of his lotus feet can understand Krishna. So Padaraja means the dust of the lotus feet. And Abhishekam actually means Abhishek, like to bathe yourself in the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotee. Which means, it can mean literally the dust of the lotus feet. If we have the opportunity, we should definitely take the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotee. But generally, it means to follow the instructions of the pure devotee or the spiritual master. First, one must understand how to get out of the clutches of Maya. Yeah, we want to get out of the clutches of Maya. The only means is to become Krishna conscious. And to become Krishna conscious very easily, one must take shelter of a realized soul, a Mahat or Mahatma, whose only interest is to engage in the service of the Supreme Lord. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 9:13, Mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakritimashitaha bhajantyananyam manaso gyatva bhutadimavvyayam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So here Prahlad is saying, Mahiya Shan, Padarajo Vishekam. So Mahiya means great soul, just like Mahatma. And so Srila Prabhupada is explaining who is a Mahatma, what is the definition of Mahatma from the Bhagavad Gita. So we know to whom we need to take shelter. We know the dust of whose lotus feet we should take on our heads. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So Hiranyakasipu wanted to know how Prahlad had become Krishna conscious. And Prahlad is answering, only by bowing down to the lotus feet of a pure devotee. So indirectly, he was telling his father, you don't need to worry about becoming Krishna conscious because you're too proud. You'll never bow down at the lotus feet of a pure devotee. So you don't need to worry about becoming Krishna conscious. To end the unwanted miseries of life, one must become a devotee. Yasasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana sarvar gunais tatra samasate sura. One who has unflinching devotional faith in Krishna consistently manifests all the good qualities of Krishna and the demigods. Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18-12. Yasya deve parabhaktir yata deve tataguro tasyete katita hyartha prakashante mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. So once Srila Prabhupada was discussing with his disciple Guru Kripa, and he asked him, what is the most important verse in the Vedic literature? And Guru Kripa replied, Harinam, Harinam, Harinami Kevalam, Kalona Stevana, Stevana, Stevaka Tiranyata. And Srila Prabhupada said no. And then Prabhupada quoted this verse. Yasya deve parabhaktir yata deve tataguro tasyete katita hyartha prakashante mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. Saitasvatara Upanishad 6:23. Yame Vaisha Vrinute Te Nalabhyas Tasyaiva Atma Vrinute Tanum Swam. The Lord is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. Mundaka Upanishad 3:2-3. So Srila Prabhupada had also quoted the same verse from Mundaka Upanishad 3:2-3 earlier in the purport. A different, Nayam Atma Pravachanena Lavyo Na Bedaya Na Bahana Shutena. One cannot become self-realized simply by having an academic education, by presenting lectures in an erudite way, pravachanena labhya, or being an intelligent scientist who discovers many wonderful things. And then the verse continues, the Lord is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own form. These are Vedic injunctions. One must take shelter of a self-realized spiritual master, not a materially educated scholar or politician. One must take shelter of a niskinchana, a person engaged in devotional service and free from material contamination. That is the way to return home back to Godhead. So thank you, Srila Prabhupada. You are that spiritual master. You are that Niskinchana. You are that Mahatma. And by our good fortune, we have come in contact with you. And all of this knowledge has been revealed to us. And you are leading us on the path back home, back to Godhead. And we just have to remain faithful to you and to your instructions and to your mission, and adhere to your instructions faithfully. Srila Prabhupada has often spoke about sincerity. And once when a disciple asked him, how can we be sincere? Srila Prabhupada replied, by following all of the instructions of the spiritual master, however big or small. And another time, when Srila Prabhupada asked, how can we become sincere, be sincere, or become sincere, he replied, by associating with devotees who are sincere. So association is very important. Srila Prabhupada said 90% of Krishna consciousness is association. So yeah, we should adhere to the association of devotees. Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra Kai, Lavamatra Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hai. Just by a moment's association with a sadhu, sadhu means devotee, one can attain all perfection. And in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami enumerates 5 most potent forms of devotional service. There's Sadhu Sangha, Bhagavat Shravana, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Sadhu Sangha, and Mathura Vas, residing in Mathura, and Murti Sharanvita Sevana, worshiping the deity with faith and veneration. Of course, it's not automatic, because once when His Holiness Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj visited Mauritius, we had a program at the ISKCON Vedic Farm, the Krishna Balaram Temple. And after the program, I was, speaking about these 5 most potent items of devotional service, and one is Mathura Vas, to reside in Mathura. And His Holiness Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj looked me straight in the eyes and said, Kamsa also resided in Mathura. So, so yeah, it's not automatic, but we have to have the right consciousness. But Sadhu Sangha, so coming back to Sadhu Sangha, Srila Rupa Goswami has given the definition in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Swajati ashaye snigde sadhu sangha swatovare. So swajatiya, jat, in a way it means caste or community. So swajati ashaye snigde, Srila Prabhupada translates as who have a similar affection for the Lord. And for us, that would mean to be faithful followers of Srila Prabhupada. Swajati Ashe Snigde. Snigde can also mean that the sadhu should be affectionate to you. So, Swajati Ashe Snigde Sadhu Sangha Sotovare. And Sotovare means they should be more advanced than you. So that's Sadhu Sangha, the definition given by Srila Rupa Goswami. At one stage, I mean, maybe it's there now, I don't know, but at one stage, some devotees were thinking Sadhu Sangha, they had to go outside of ISKCON to find someone who was more advanced. And so one year, His Holiness Sachinandan Swami was he was doing quite a serious Namavrat during Kartik at Radhakund. And I was staying nearby at the Bhaktivedanta ashram at Govardhan. It was like a palace that had belonged to a king that Tamal Krishna Goswami and I had arranged to get. And, he was chanting so many rounds, he hardly had time for anything else, but he did kindly agree to meet me. And we were discussing this point of sadhu sangha and how some devotees thought they had to go outside of ISKCON to get more advanced association. And Sachinandan Swami said that no, we can get the association in ISKCON. It's a matter of having the right humble attitude. And he gave the example of us, him and me, that he, Sachinandan Swami, would be thinking, oh, Giriraj Swami is more advanced than I am. I can learn from him. I should serve him. And Giriraj Swami will be thinking, oh, Sachinandan Swami is more advanced than I am. I should serve him and learn from him. So he felt very strongly that with that humble attitude of appreciation, one could fulfill the definition of sadhu sangha within ISKCON. Sadhu sangha sotovare, associate with one more advanced than oneself. So these are some thoughts on the occasion of Lord Nrsingadev's appearance day, inspired by the pastimes, by the verses and purports we read in Srimad Bhagavatam. And by feeling very grateful for Srila Prabhupada's mercy, because, it's only by the mercy of such a devotee that one can take to Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. So are there any questions or comments?
Thank you, Maharaj, for Sadhu Sangha Satavare. It's your mercy. So we all are benefiting. And it proves that Prabhupada was a scientist, Krishna conscious scientist, who proved all these verses, what you have described. And so that should solidify our faith in him and the process.
Yes. Yeah.
But still we are struggling. So how we can expand the faith and be more sincere to Srila Prabhupada and his devotees?
Well, by following the instructions, we get results. Srila Prabhupada said it's a scientific process. And so if you follow the scientific process, you get the results. And when you get the results, then your faith increases. But an important part of Krishna consciousness is sharing our good fortune with others. And so we want to do both. We want to taste Krishna consciousness and also share Krishna consciousness with others. And when we do so, we get a lot of mercy. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that, he who explains this knowledge is most dear to him, and there will never be one more dear. And that for such a devotee, devotional service is guaranteed, and you will go back home, back to Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada, very much emphasized preaching, you could say preaching. And so along with our own efforts at sadhana, we also have to make efforts to spread Krishna consciousness. I think of it was like my last exchange with Srila Prabhupada just a few, maybe 3 days before he left. I was taking rest on the roof of the Gurukul building, and suddenly a devotee came up in the middle of the night and said, Srila Prabhupada wants to see you. So, I immediately went to Srila Prabhupada's room. He was lying on his bed, very weak, as I mentioned, just maybe 3 days before he left. And he asked me, do you think this movement will go on after I leave? And I replied, yes, as long as the devotees are sincere and chant their rounds and follow the regulated principles, the movement will go on. And then Srila Prabhupada said, with great difficulty, because he was very weak and his voice was quite faint, but very distinctly, he said, organization, intelligence and organization. And I thought about the significance of those words of Srila Prabhupada's. And I considered that, yes, we have to be sincere and chant our rounds and follow the regulated principles. We have to do that to maintain our Krishna consciousness. But beyond just maintaining our Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to spread Krishna consciousness. And that requires organization and intelligence. So yeah, we have to be very organized to spread Krishna consciousness. And pure, of course, purity is the force. Books are the basis. Utility is the principle. So, yeah. So when we do that, however, by distributing books, Srila Prabhupada was very pleased when devotees distributed his books. We get special mercy, and that also increases our faith and our enthusiasm. Yeah. So we want to follow both kinds of instructions for our own personal spiritual practices, and also instructions to spread Krishna consciousness.
And Maharaj, your book is doing the same, increasing more faith in Prabhupada. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I saw someone, I saw someone with a hand up. Oh, maybe, I thought.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Guru Maharaj, my husband Neeraj,
Hare Krishna.
he has a question. Can he ask?
Yes.
Guru Maharaj, yesterday I was reading somewhere. The words are this way. It has always seemed strange to me. The things we admire in men, kindness and generosity, openness, honesty, understanding and feeling, are the comicant of the failure in our system. And those traits we detest, sharpness, greed, acquisiteness, meanness, egotism, and self-interest, are the traits of the success. And while men admire the quality of the first, they love the produce of the second. So after reading this, I read about 3-4 times this thing, and it generated a lot of, I want some insight in it, why it is so. Like on one side, we appreciate kind people, generous people, open people, honest people. And at the same time, we see these qualities are leading them to the failure. And then at the same time, we see the sharpness, greed, acquisiteness, meanness, growth. And we see these people are progressing. And as a human being, we keep on admiring. We keep on saying, yeah, everybody must be kind, everybody must be straightforward, everything. But at the same time, we love whatever the success the other person gets by his all these things which we don't appreciate, in fact. So can you guide us on the same?
Yes. It's like the New York Yankees, who are like the most successful baseball team in America. For many years, they had a manager named Casey Stengel, who led them to so many World Series. So he said, good guys finish last. So that's sort of the premise of this quotation that you read. But what you said is not, or what you read is not entirely true. Let me see, because I'll find this because your wife sent it to me. She wanted my advice. So I'll read it. I have it here. It has always seemed strange to me. The things we admire in men, kindness and generosity, openness, honesty, understanding, and feeling, are the concomitants of failure in our system. So, do you think Srila Prabhupada was kind, generous, open, honest, understanding, and feeling? Yes, he was. And do you think he was a failure? No, he wasn't. So this quotation doesn't really apply necessarily. I mean, it could apply, but it doesn't necessarily apply. You know, someone can have good qualities, those qualities that people admire, and be successful. So I don't know who wrote this, but I don't accept him as an authority. I don't think that what he wrote really, I don't think it stands true. It may in some cases, but not in all cases.
But why in some cases?
Because we're in the material world. And, but I don't, but I would add to that when it does hold true, it won't last. Because you just cannot, like Hiranyakashipu. I mean, according to this statement, Hiranyakashipu should be the most successful person. And in a way, he was for a while. But in the end, he lost it all because of his bad qualities. So this is actually a very good quotation, because Prahlad, he was kind, generous, open, honest, understanding, and feeling, which according to this are concomitants of failure in our system, but he was successful. And the traits we detest, sharpness, greed, acquisitiveness, meanness, egotism, and self-interest, which were exemplified by Hiranyakashipu, according to this, are the traits of success. So yeah, he was successful, Hiranyakashipu, for a while, but not long. And ultimately, Prahlad, who had all the good qualities, he was successful. And he, of course, he was successful spiritually, that's the main thing, but he also inherited his father's kingdom. But he remained a good person, and he had the blessings of Lord Nrsingadev to rule. So there are many examples of saintly kings in Vedic civilization. You don't have to be. So from this, are you thinking you have to become mean and all those things to be successful? Your wife says no. So I don't think it's very good for your marriage if you became all those things. Okay. I hope that answers you.
It was a perfect question and a perfect answer on the perfect day from the perfect person, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, Sheena has her hand up.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Can you hear me, Maharaj?
Yes, I can.
Maharaj, Maharaj, I had a small question. It seems from today's lecture that sincerity seems to be the key ingredient when it comes to earning the grace of Lord. And you also mentioned that our endeavors, it seems that they don't have a great role to play. And also you said that having faith in the spiritual master and Krishna is what is required to progress in bhakti. But then one statement that Lord reveals only to one whom he himself chooses. So I mean, what qualification, do we need to develop in ourselves? Because we can do nothing. And then this last statement that it's going to be ultimately Krishna's will. So
Yeah, well, that was answered in the verse Yasodeva Parabhakti, that he will reveal himself to one who has implicit faith in the spiritual master and similar faith in the Supreme Lord. So it's based on our faith in the spiritual master and in the Supreme Lord. It's true, he reveals himself to those whom he chooses, but who does he choose? That's explained in the verse. He chooses those who have implicit faith in the spiritual master and similar faith in the Supreme Lord. And faith in the spiritual master means one will follow the instructions of the spiritual master. So if you follow the instructions of the spiritual master, Krishna will reveal himself to you.
Right, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Hi, Krishna. Nice to see you. Santi Kumarasamy.
Okay. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. My humble obeisances to you, Guru Maharaj. Okay, Guru Maharaj, this is pertaining to preaching. Okay, for instance, let's say we start distributing books and start preaching. So for instance, like, we have got the Bhakti Viriksha classes going on, and we managed to gather non-devotees who eventually became devotees. Some of them became devotees, but eventually they stop reading Bhagavad Gita. So it was just like, we distributed books, but it was of no use actually. So what can we do about this? I mean, how can we increase the number of devotees? How can we revive Krishna consciousness in them? Of course, initially they start chanting and eventually they just stop everything. And there are also cases where some devotees, they are non-Krishna consciousness now. Okay, they just say, okay, I'm happier in my life now. Okay, I've got more money. They are more materialistic, and they just say, okay, I don't want to entertain anything to do with Krishna now. They were actually devotees. So what can we do? Though Lord Krishna says, put in our best effort, leave the results to Krishna. Put in our best effort, leave the results to Lord Krishna. So kindly enlighten us on this, Guru Maharaj. How do we increase preaching?
Well, I mean, it's good that people come. Of course,
Okay.
it's not good that they leave. And Srila Prabhupada said, when someone leaves,
Okay.
we should think that we are 50% responsible and they are 50% responsible. So we should think our 50%, what we could do better or what we could have done better so that they wouldn't leave. But whatever service they did, it is not in vain. It will accrue to their spiritual bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they're not taking advantage of it now, but it's there, the spiritual credit is there. And when they come back to Krishna consciousness, they will be able to avail of the spiritual credits that they got. But coming back to the statement of Srila Prabhupada that Krishna consciousness is 90% association, we should try to make our association so nice that people want to stay in it. They don't want to leave our association. And at the same time, we can warn them. Of course, it depends, in the beginning, we may not want to warn them because they may not be ready to hear it. But at a certain stage, we can warn them about the dangers of associating with materialistic people. Because we are, as Prabhupada says, man is a social animal. So we'll be influenced. You know, man is known by the company he keeps, so they should keep company with devotees. But we want to make our company so appealing and attractive that they want to keep company with us. And they don't want to stray away. And good prasad, you know, it also counts a lot. Devotees are joined because of prasad, and we can keep them by good prasad.
Mm.
Srila Prabhupada introduced the Sunday love feast. Yeah. I heard in the old temple in New York City in the early days, Srila Prabhupada would keep a jar of gulab jamuns at the door. So when I was thinking of leaving, they'd have to pass the jar of gulab jamuns. And then on the way out, they would have some gulab jamuns, and then they would change their mind and decide to stay.
Right, great. Great. Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Leela Dasi has her hand up.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my obeisances. Yeah, I was hearing a quote fairly recently, and it came up again by a senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and it was something that Prabhupada had said, and I was wondering where and what context it was said. So it goes something like this, that Prabhupada said, I may disappoint you, but Krishna will never disappoint you. So I wonder if you'd heard that before and where it comes from.
Yes. Yes, Srila Prabhupada had a disciple named Pushta Krishna Prabhu, very nice devotee. He passed away a couple of years ago. And so Pushta Krishna Prabhu said to Srila Prabhupada that, you know, I can trust you, but I can't trust any of your disciples. And Srila Prabhupada, but this was his humility. Srila Prabhupada said, you know, don't trust me either, because I may also disappoint you, but just trust Krishna. And that's why we could trust Srila Prabhupada, because he always directed us to Krishna. He didn't direct us to himself, independent of Krishna. He directed us to Krishna. So we could trust him. But yes, that was the context.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? All right, well, if not, we can end with Vaishnava Pranam. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are just like desired creatures and can fulfill the desires of every full of compassion.
Panchakalpata rupyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha
Please wait,
patitana
Maharaj is still
sarvabhyo.
in translation.
Yes, thank
Please
you.
wait.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to say it in English first. We're more conscious of what we're saying, and then we will say it in Sanskrit. So let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava
Respectful.
to fulfill the desires of everyone. Panchakam.
Panchakalpata rupyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha
Pavanebhyo
sindhubhya eva cha
Hare
pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare
Thank
Krishna
you,
Guru
Maharaj.
Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Thank you. Hare
Thank
Krishna
you
Guru
so much,
Maharaj.
Guru Maharaj. Thanks a lot, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, thank you, thank you,
Hare
Guru
Krishna.
Maharaj.
Hare